welcome back to why can't I hear myself again? Oh my. I can never hear myself. There we go. Welcome back to another edition of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens. You can find my movie reviews and interviews in print and online in the U.S. and abroad 24/7. Of course, you can always find the reviews and interviews on behindthelensonline.net. But every Monday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I am right here on adrenalineradio.com as we go behind the lens and below the line, film, TV, stage, music, covering all aspects of the creative process. I'm very excited today. We have an incredible guest today. This harkens back to the girl can always leave Philadelphia, but you can't take Philadelphia out of the girl. And that's one reason I'm very excited with BRIAN CAVALLARO, who will be here at about the quarter hour mark today. Writer, director, he's an Emmy Award winner. He's won awards for commercials he's done. This is his first foray into the horror genre with feature filmmaking. And his new film, Against the Night, shot in Philadelphia, but not just in Philadelphia, in one of the most notorious and infamous, iconic spots in Philadelphia, Holmesburg Prison. This is one of the astounding things that BRIAN has done. He's writer, director, and cinematographer. Shoots a lot of the film with night vision, really complex visual blend and editing going on, and a really fun story that obviously, we're going to find this out. Did he have shooting in Holmesburg in mind when he came up with the story? But BRIAN will be joining us shortly, and I'm very, very excited to have him with us. Anytime I can talk about a horror film, that's great. When I love it, it's even better. When it's shot in Philly at somewhere like Holmesburg, that's the icing on the cake. But, before we get to BRIAN today, a film that I absolutely love this year, My Cousin Rachel. It came and went in theaters a couple months ago. It did its pretty much requisite 1-week theatrical release, but it is now available Blu-ray, DVD, on-demand, digital download. My Cousin Rachel, starring Rachel Weisz and Sam Claflin, as well as Holliday Grainger. This is based on Daphne du Maurier's 8th novel, My Cousin Rachel. Classic film fans, all of you at TCM, most of you are well aware of the 1952 version of My Cousin Rachel that starred Olivia de Havilland and Richard Burton in his first movie role. It was directed by Henry Koster, and it was written by Nunnally Johnson. Interesting pairing with Henry Koster and Nunnally Johnson. Koster, known for directing Bette Davis in The Virgin Queen, Victor Mature in The Robe, which, by the way, was the very first CinemaScope film ever shot. Harvey with Jimmy Stewart. Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation with Jimmy Stewart. Dear Brigitte with Jimmy Stewart. The Bishop's Wife. Nunnally Johnson, a writer and a director, but known more for his writing, in addition to adapting the du Maurier novel, also wrote things like How to Marry a Millionaire, The Dirty Dozen, Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation, The Three Faces of Eve, which was just on TCM this past weekend, The Grapes of Wrath, The Dirty Dozen. Very eclectic blend there. But it was the pairing of Koster and Johnson that really gave some visualization and magnitude to du Maurier's story of My Cousin Rachel. As I mentioned, this was her 8th novel. And some of the other films that were based on du Maurier books include, I think it had one of Alfred Hitchcock's favorites, The Birds, Rebecca, Jamaica Inn, which, by the way, thanks to Cohen Media, there is that beautiful, beautiful 4K restoration that is out and about that came out earlier this year with a special screening, screening it as part of Cohen Film Classics on KCET. And I think there are plans for it to be out on DVD and Blu-ray. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Not only is it a wonderful adaptation of a Du Maurier book, but it's a great Hitchcock as well. But, as distinctive as My Cousin Rachel has been over the years, because it also promulgated a 1983 TV movie of the same name starring Geraldine Chaplin and Christopher Guard. Now we have Roger Michell, who's best known for Notting Hill, Hyde Park on Hudson, Morning Glory, Changing Lanes, a very eclectic palette. But Roger decided himself to adapt and direct another version. And there were two big challenges that he faced in this adaptation. Not only in adapting the script, but distinguishing it from that 1952 film by Coster with de Havilland and Burton. He worked very closely with Du Maurier's granddaughter, Grace Browning, had her blessing with this project. And I had a chance to do an absolutely lovely, lovely exclusive interview with him a couple months ago for the theatrical release. I knew we wouldn't get to use the interview at that point, but I knew that DVD, Blu-ray, and VOD was just around the corner. So we're going to break this down and let you hear what Roger Michell had to say. And now, mind you, this comes from the man who brought you Notting Hill, now tackling this psychological thriller of My Cousin Rachel. And first and foremost, and this will be clip 1A, Pam, why this book? Out of every adaptation, why this one? Is there something special about this particular Du Maurier book that led you to do the adaptation?
Well, I don't. To my shame, I don't know all her books, but this is really the sort of halfway through her career. She wrote this book, and it marked the end of her more famous books, if you like. This one, she never wrote anything after this which had the same purchase on the public imagination.
Right.
These things speak to you in ways that you don't understand, I guess, and this one spoke to me.
Well, and after it spoke to him, the obvious question is, how do you go about tackling the story? I had great trepidation coming into it because I am one of those people that films that have been done in the past, you don't redo them. But as opposed to doing a remake of a film, you did a fresh adaptation on the book.
Yeah, I didn't watch the original film, Debbie, for obvious reasons. I thought it was probably wisest if I didn't watch it at all, simply because I didn't want to be influenced by it or to have a view on it one way or the other. I mean, the only thing I did when I was adapting the script one afternoon, I hit a roadblock and I was a little bored, so I watched the trailer to the original film, which I thought was very intriguing. And I read some of the reviews. There was a New York Times review from 1952, which I couldn't resist reading. But otherwise, I used the book as my source and nothing else.
Well, so going strictly by the book, which is where working with Du Maurier's granddaughter, Grace Browning, and giving permission from the estate and whatnot became very important. So how do you tackle a beloved and well-known book like not just My Cousin Rachel, but a Du Maurier book? What was that adaptation process like? Here's what Roger had to say. How challenging was it to do this adaptation? Du Maurier's books are such a great source of material for film, but they are, because of her style of writing, they are very tricky.
Yeah, she's very cinematic in the way that she writes prose. You feel that she's almost got one ear or one eye on what a film of her work might be. She sometimes even seems to sort of write cutting points and cliffhangers, and she does quite a lot of lighting in her book. There's often a lot of thought put into what the atmosphere in the room is like. Is it candlelight? Is it daylight? Where's the light coming from? Is it backlight? It's all very, very filmy in a really rich and interesting other adaptation, a lot of what she writes is vast paragraphs of internal stuff about what Philip's thinking. And obviously, as an adapter, you have to find ways and strategies for not only giving a version of that to the viewer, but also, how do you show on film this idea of an unreliable narrator? Someone who progressively one becomes less confident is quite telling us the truth, or is quite understanding the truth. You start off the film and the book thinking this is going to be quite a conventional way into the story. He's my guy. He's going to tell me what's happened, and I'm going to believe everything he says. But as you go on, you start to see that he's complicated and he's compromised. He's had this old upbringing without women, without a lot of intimacy, lonely, vigorous, but cultish, naive, very masculine, and yet also oddly childish. All that I found all that interesting. Then into this kind of rather naive young man's life comes this incredibly sophisticated foreigner. Sophisticated partly because of who she is and partly from where she comes from, partly her age. I mean, I've made the age difference bigger than it is in the book. In the book, she's 35 and he's 25, and nowadays that doesn't mean anything to us, that kind of age difference. So I wanted to make it feel more like more of a transgressive relationship between someone in their early 20s and someone who's in her middle to late 40s. So you really do feel like he's in some ways falling in love with his mother or his stepmother, or you feel that there's something wrong about it. He shouldn't be having sex with his father / cousin's widow. It's just not good. And that's what's great to watch, and that's what's great to write and to play around with those ideas.
Okay. And we will get back to Roger Michelle, because right now, and my cousin Rachel, because right now, yes, we do have Brian, do we not, Pam? As she nods her head. Yes, Pam nods her head. Just so I'm so excited to have this gentleman joining us today on Behind the Lens. Welcome, Brian Cavallaro.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your show.
Oh, my God. Thank you. I love your work.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, this is a real... Anytime I can get somebody from home on the show, and it's a film that just so embodies life in Philadelphia over the centuries, I love having them. And you, a man who shot a film in Holmesburg Prison, I'm just tickled to death.
Thank you.
This is, I was explaining earlier in the show, to people who don't know about Holmesburg Prison. It's a stunning building when you look at the construction of it, dating back to 1895. And I don't think when it was built, anybody would have ever thought it would become a favorite place for people to want to film movies in.
Definitely not. Yeah. I don't think that was the expectation for, anybody at the time. And there's a handful of buildings that are just like that in Philadelphia that are abandoned and obviously don't meet current prison standards, but they're all quite beautiful and definitely very pretty to film.
And the fact that they have lasted, Holmesburg's been there for 122 years now.
And there are parts of it that are still active.
But not the very cool part that you shot in for Against the Night. I have to ask you, Brian, this is your first foray into the quote-unquote horror psychological thriller. You have a very storied resume, respected resume as a commercial director. You've won Emmy Awards. You've done feature films, but you haven't made that leap into horror. And that's something I find interesting because so many filmmakers, they always try and do horror right out of the box. And you didn't.
Yeah, to me, it's whatever story is speaking to you at the time, right? Obviously, it takes a little bit to get a movie made. And if there's something that makes sense and that you're passionate about, I think that, kind of helps dictate where you're moving towards, like how you're going to make the next movie. And, for sure, it's interesting that you are interested in talking about Holmesburg, because finding a location like that really, the location existed long before the story did. Let's put it that way. One wouldn't exist without the other.
You don't grow up in Philadelphia and not know about Holmesburg Prison. I mean, that's
certainly the prison systems that are there and how they exist is definitely something people know about.
I mean, that was some of the coolest stuff. I mean, I have over the years I've been to Holmesburg Prison before, so to see it, I think the last time I really saw it utilized in a film was for Up Close and Personal with Redford and Pfeiffer. But it was used for a completely different purpose. But having been there outside of production, but actually been on the premises and been there, covering news items or just touring the facility, you see the potential for a really good horror film where somebody makes use of the facility as it is, not trying to alter it or change it. And that's one of the great things that you do with Against the Night is it's more or less you have structured this very film around Holmesburg itself.
Yeah, totally. And you're right. I've seen half a dozen movies that have been filmed there before. Because it's a great space. There's a lot of empty hallways and large soundstage type facilities, holding facilities that have been sort of repurposed for different reasons. But yeah, I haven't seen anything that's really been able to use the prison for all the the good parts, the good decaying parts that exist.
And they are some really good decaying parts. So when did you realize you wanted to delve into this genre, into this, telling this story, and when did Holmesburg pop up in your head? Is it the kind of thing that in the middle of the night in a dream, it's like, oh, Holmesburg Prison, that would be a cool movie? Or,
Well, I mean, long time ago, I took a tour of the Eastern State Penitentiary, which has that same sort of wheel and spoke design.
Oh, isn't that a cool? That one's a cool one too.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great prisons like this that I don't feel like have really hit the public consciousness, especially in the United States. There's a lot of these in Europe as well. So the first time I took a tour of that prison, I was like, this for sure is a home for a movie. And then it just became about which prison was the best one to film in. And the first time I saw Holmesburg, it was obviously the best case scenario.
Now, did you have any idea of what the script would be when you saw Holmesburg?
There were a couple of different versions of what was, what made sense. But I definitely, with the experience that I have in terms of non-scripted, I've done some ghost hunting kind of shows. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to lean towards that, right? Like there was a filmmaker interested in making a film there, and then, things went wrong. That was something I could imagine very easily.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of, of the plot point there of a filmmaker that decided he wanted to do, a ghost story movie at Holmesburg Prison, and lures his friends there, as don't we all do that when we're making low-budget, no-budget films. We all lure our friends there for purposes like that. You did an incredible job casting Luke Persiani as Hank, our filmmaker. Because
I was very fortunate with the entire cast, but yeah, Luke was an absolute pleasure.
Well, and he really gets into it, and I mean, I'm sure filmmakers exactly like Hank. I know filmmakers like Hank, and that really sets the ball in motion for selling this whole idea of this whole group of people going to help their friend make a film in this allegedly haunted, I still think it is haunted, prison.
You would have a hard time convincing the cast that it's not haunted as well, so you're on point.
Number one, how do you get a cast to agree to go shoot a film in Holmesburg Prison? But people don't realize with that wheel spoke system, there really are no lights in these cells. it is dark in those corridors. You know,
I don't know if they knew what they were getting themselves into.
You didn't have full disclosure? Oh, Brian. Brian.
Well, we knew that it was, an abandoned prison, but I think the first time they sort of went from holding to the actual, where a scene might take place, and they were being guided by flashlights. I think that's when it really kind of sunk in.
How do you go about, I'm afraid to ask how you got insurance for this thing. I'm hoping, though, you did have a medical crew on standby, because going through those dark corridors in that prison, as gross and disgusting and decaying as it is, I'm sure that there were heart palpitations, happening every few minutes.
Well, so there are 8 hallways that lead off of the center corridor, and you can really only go down 3 or 4 of them. The rest are, condemned, for lack of a better word. And the city of Philadelphia did a great job. I mean, not only did we have medical staff, we had police officers there with us at all times. And the city of Philadelphia did a great job of, do's and don'ts, and insurance for the film was an actual, that was a thing. It was during the process of insurance. It was, the bane of my existence, but certainly happy to have it once we went forward. It definitely made everybody feel more comfortable knowing that we were doing the right things in the right places.
So did you have any of the cast want to bow out after you actually took them and showed them where they'd be making this movie?
I don't think it was that dramatic, but there was definitely some people in the cast that were a little bit more, they were all very good about, obviously they're supposed to look scared, so that helped. But, we were in between scenes. There were definitely some cast members that didn't like hanging out too long. They wanted to get back to the holding area.
Mm-hmm. So now you have your cast in place. You have your script in place. Was this totally scripted out, Brian, in terms of dialogue and also in terms of your visuals? Were you shot listing, storyboarding? Because you're essentially working in darkness for the bulk of this.
Right.
So I would think you've got to have all the details really nailed down.
Yeah, the script was, fully fleshed out. I think it's a compliment to question whether or not some of it was or wasn't. I try to give the actors some leeway in certain scenes to really get across the spirit of the scene. Mm-hmm. But it's all there on paper. In terms of storyboarding, anything that was beyond a dialogue scene, anytime there was any kind of running or action or things like that, that was very carefully planned out. Because obviously you're right, it's very dark, and want to make sure we did things the right way.
Mm-hmm. And and you did your own cinematography, so you didn't have to confer with anybody in that regard. But did you have anything that influenced the look that you came up with for this film? Because you're utilizing, and I love that you did this, you utilized to give the idea of the film within a film. You're using night vision. You're using flashlights. Minimally, you have one cell phone that gets used before it's no longer used. There are no windows. You really embrace this. But what kind of technology did that then require in order to execute your visuals with this methodology?
Well, it definitely worked in the sense that there's obviously a couple different ways you could make this movie. And, we went at it with a low budget, genre film in mind. And in that regard, if you're going to make an independent film, it's really, I think, great to approach it like a way that you couldn't make a studio film. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if a studio film would have let you get away with just using flashlights. The Sony A7S is the camera that we use. Oh. It is an extremely low light camera. And after we did a few tests, we knew we could sort of get away with the plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the first film that I saw using that camera, No Good Deed, I think Idris Elba and Taraji P. Henson starred and produced it. And that was one of the big things that they implemented that camera because it was done with no light at night. And it really
it's a beautiful camera.
Oh, I mean, and the visuals, I have to say, they are gorgeous.
Thank you.
You actually bring in, and this is what really struck me, is that we actually get a sense of color, of the gray on gray, the decay on decay with the visuals that you have. And I thought that was a wonderful achievement for you to capture that, because it doesn't look like just a plain, you've seen them before. You walk into a set, or you can even go to a location, but it looks flat. It doesn't look like there's no texture, there's no life. Here, you feel that life was here, and it just rotted like necrotic skin, and it's just varying thanks to the color that the camera picked up with the shades of gray. We really feel that, and it adds a sensory aspect to the film.
I'm glad that came across, for sure.
Was that something, were you consciously trying to bring texture into your visuals?
I was constantly trying to not mess up what was already there. When you stand there and you see it, that's the goal. Was you want it to feel like, you want it to look like it feels when you're standing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate to have a good color timer with me in post, who understood that and helped bring it to life.
Now, the shooting and night vision, did that present any kind of problems for you?
I think people run into the same problems with night vision, over and over again. I was really happy to have the camera and at times used it more than it was even scripted to be used, because, Luke was operating the camera the whole time, and he's a very good filmmaker in his own right. So
Mm-hmm.
I was able to pull a little bit more out of it than I expected. But yeah, there are some colors and textures and things that didn't, work with night vision as well as you would like to. So you have to improvise and try different ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There were some times we shot without night vision and then made it look like night vision in post to accomplish the look we were going for.
Don't even tell me what scenes, because I never would have known that.
Good.
Looking at the finished product,
Mission accomplished.
I would never have known that. Now, did you have to do any kind of production design or set dress within the prison itself?
We did. There is a scene that takes place later in the film where they sort of start coming to the end of their, conclusions as to what might be going on. And everything that sort of happens in the third act is, the structure is there, but then all the materials that, fill the room is all production design. I think it blends nicely. I think that it was very believable, and that was all done by our production designer, Julia Ecklenrod, who did a great job.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about the production design in the exterior adjoining building within the prison walls.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. It's all still part of the prison.
Oh yeah.
The structure's there. It's also there, but everything that's in the room was brought in.
But you're right. I mean, the way you develop the story, and then the visuals, and and the set decoration that you actually incorporated there, it really does fit. And going back to your script itself, and you tie that in very nicely with your dialogue with your detective who is investigating. I mean, we're not spoiling anything to say we got some dead bodies floating around here.
Yeah, I think they say that, I think, in the first 5 seconds. So,
yeah.
No spoiler alerts.
But you bring in Frank Whaley, who is fabulous. I love Frank Whaley. But you bookend the film with him questioning one of these wonderful young people who are helping their friend make a horror movie, a ghost movie, and the dialogue ties everything in together, and it's just so beautifully constructed with that bookend. It's testament to you as a screenwriter that you could write that and you could tie it together with the visuals without destroying anything.
Thank you very much, and super happy to have Frank Whaley for that, because it obviously those scenes get a little wordy. He's very involved in the exposition of the film, and wanted a pro all along to help sort of tell that story and make it believable. And he's consummate pro. He was so great to work with.
Well, the way your story structure is done, Brian, I really like your setup. We have the party scene, the requisite party scene. Friends are partying. Yeah, one's a filmmaker. One, yeah, he thinks it's very fun to shoot his friends having sex and things like that. Um, but then when we delve into, and we've got the whole setup of the one person relaying without a flashback, with sepia tones and things like that, we are actually transported and live out exactly what they lived out with a feeling that it's almost in real time. And I think that's a testament to you and your construct. Was that always how you envisioned to see this unfold, as opposed to
Was that?
we just start with, we start with a party scene, we start with murders, blah, blah, blah?
That was always the plan, and I was a little nervous about that plan, and because a lot of good horror movies start with a couple good kills in the beginning, and sort of you get led down that path. But I wanted to really feel like sort of one long sort of flashback. But we took careful time to make sure that the time code in the camera of Luke's camera is catching up in real time, that it's all feels like it just happened all in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly there were some conversations about having, flashbacks or flash forwards in the detective scenes. But I wanted to feel the way that you're describing it, which is that it was just happening in real time.
Yeah, it really, it allows you as you're watching it to really become immersed in the moment, to the point of feeling that, okay, we are there, we are in the prison with them as this is unfolding. And so much of that is because of your first person POV with the camera.
Yeah, and didn't want to make it feel like we were going to use any tricks,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, if you start in the beginning and there's some scary flash forward, then you feel like anything could happen. Like, you might wake up from a dream sequence. But if you really set the tone early to say, this is all real time, this is all really happening, then the scares hopefully feel a little bit more real.
And, of course, you mentioned tricks, but something that you didn't use tricks on, and you used good old-fashioned storytelling and visuals, you create this great ambiguity that just builds and builds and builds and shifts as the film goes on. How challenging was that for you to not just create ambiguity, but the way you throw that ambiguity at each individual person at different moments? And your wonderful editor, Kevin Armstrong, has to build on that pacing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was all pacing, and in that regard, I totally push on to the cast and to Kevin. The cast kept the parts of the story that sort of needed to happen to get you to the fun stuff. Mm-hmm. They kept it fun and interesting and authentic, and that's all on them. And then Kevin helped keep the pacing moving in the right direction, and knew when we needed a breath and knew when it was time to get back into it. So very fortunate to work with smart people on that.
I'm curious, what led you to Kevin? I mean, I know he worked on Bad Milo, which I still think it was very underrated. I loved Bad Milo. I thought it was hilarious. But what led you to Kevin for this particular project?
I had seen some of Kevin's work and saw Bad Milo on his resume and had seen some of his work, and I had not met him before this project. And so we met and talked about it and talked about how it might go, and we both had the same idea of how it would work, and then we just started moving forward, and it was great. I can't wait to do something else with him.
So how much footage? You had the Sony camera as your primary camera, but then you also have other shots within the film. Were you using other external cameras to pick up those spot shots? How did that work? And then how much footage did you and Kevin have to go through to put this together?
So the other shots you're talking about, we used the exterior of a camera. There was cameras, filming cameras, the whole thing sort of very meta. Those cameras were all sort of prop cameras, and everything that you saw that wasn't the A7S, that was all the Handycam. Those were the only two cameras that we used. So we just used that one Handycam camera for consistency, and it was also a 4K camera, so we could get a lot of data out of it and manipulate that later. We shot pretty sparingly for a film. So I don't want to say sparingly for this film, but just for a film in general. So having the extra footage was more to sort through, but I think ultimately it kept Kevin pretty happy because almost every scene, you could sort of cut it together the way that he envisioned and then go back and look at the Handycam footage and see if there's something that would add to it or if we didn't need it.
So, how much good stuff do we have we may see on a DVD or Blu-ray?
I am very much looking forward to just releasing Hank's movie, the movie that Hank made.
Uh-oh.
That is a whole separate movie.
So that will be on the DVD and Blu-ray?
Definitely.
Oh,
Definitely.
my God. You know, but you have such an incredible, your cast melds really well into an ensemble, because this is, even though they're paired off in little groups or for the bulk of the film, this is truly an ensemble work. And if the group as a whole wasn't working, the individual characteristics and how the story unfolds would not work. How hard was it for you to assemble this cast?
It was. It seems now to be easy, right? But there was a lot of Skype interviews that happened along the way. We didn't have the luxury of all being in the same city at the same time. And there was a lot of Skype interviews to sort of get to where we got. But I couldn't be more happy. And almost everybody in the cast, we didn't really meet until the first rehearsal in person. A lot of it was really just Skype interviews and a lot of emails and talking about wardrobe and talking about background and a lot of conversations. And then we really got together, the first rehearsal, and it was very fortunate that everybody was sort of on board with how we were going to make the movie, and not just how talented they were, but just how we were going to approach making the movie.
Well, you mentioned something that so often gets shortchanged, especially in a low-budget, no-budget film, and that's rehearsal time. What kind of rehearsal time did you have for Against the Night? Because this isn't just a cast going onto a set. This has logistical challenges to it. Logistical safety challenges.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So there were times where we moved very quickly. There was a lot of trust that needed to happen, with the cast. And so we, unfortunately, just for budgetary reasons, of course, everybody wants to have more time than they have. But we just essentially spent one night together to kind of get our body clocks working correctly, because we shot overnights. So we got together, we read the script, we talked a lot, we sort of pushed certain characters in some directions and pulled some other characters back, and then we just sort of went forward and then worked with it based off of that blueprint. We try to stay loose when we were actually shooting.
Wow. So how many days did you actually have to shoot?
We shot in 8 days.
8 whole days, huh?
Well, let's call it 8 whole nights.
Oh, my God. Talk about a speed run. That is incredible.
I don't know if I would have been able to go that fast if I wasn't holding the camera and if we were using, a lot of setups for lights. Mm-hmm. That really helped a lot. I had a really good gaffer with me named Christian Buffo, who, kind of helped point the flashlights in the right direction and add some fill when we needed it. And then, if I had to take a lot of time to communicate with a gaffer or a DP, it obviously wouldn't have been able to happen so fast.
That astounds me that you shot this in 8 days, or 8 nights rather. Oh my God! And that's something else I find really fascinating, is that you're in a prison that is already dark. In daylight, it's dark, and you're shooting in night, so you're making it even darker. You're not even getting ambient light from the sky coming through in the rotunda area.
It's very dark. Very dark.
I got to ask you, when did Mike Mendez come on board as one of your producers? I adore Mike. Mike just did the show not too long ago for his latest film, Don't Kill It, with Dolph Lundgren.
Isn't that movie great?
Oh, my God. I want to see that turned into a franchise.
I bet everybody does. I do.
Sure. Dolph is just fabulous in it. I know he's willing to do a franchise. But Mike, I love Mike's work. And when I saw that he was tied in with this as one of your producers, I was like, okay, well, this explains something.
Right.
Smart people are working together.
Mike is not like Kevin Armstrong. Mike is somebody I've known for a very long time, years and years and years. And so we've been friends, and he sort of helped guide me. We were working on another project together when Don't Kill It got greenlit. And, we just talked about what the process was like and the kind of movies he likes to make, which Don't Kill It was right up there. And he was excited about it. And, I sort of just fed off of his passion. It was like, I'm going to do something like this too. If you don't mind helping, sort of walk me through it, then, and he did more than that. So very lucky to have him on board.
What was the learning curve like for you jumping into this genre?
I tried not to, feel like I knew everything, right? And so I had another producer with me, Ariel Braxfeld, who is very experienced in the genre, and she came, with me to Philadelphia, and lack of a better term, babysat me and said, maybe this instead of that, and this would work here instead of there, and it was a very good sounding board for me. But yeah, I think it's important if you're not very, experienced in the genre to, understand, tropes and do's and don'ts, and then learn, at least know what it is when you're trying to break it.
Were you setting out to break a lot of the tropes when you made Against the Night?
I wanted it to be, just pure entertainment. Obviously, the story is something similar to what we've seen before, but I wanted it to be self-aware without, being too cheeky. And so hopefully we got to that point where it really just felt like it seems possible that somebody would want to make a movie in this prison, and that they would go in, and that this could happen. And it wasn't all done just for cheap thrills. Well,
as my brother texted me this morning when I said, hey, isn't it ironic? Interviewing a filmmaker, he made his horror film in Holmesburg Prison. He texts back, doesn't every filmmaker make a film in Holmesburg Prison? So, okay, he answered your very comment right there, It's like, okay, it's not cheesy. Everybody does it. So, you really avoided falling into repetitious tropes, though, Brian. And a lot of that, I think, goes also to your cast. One of your standouts, and I've got to ask you about him, Josh Kahn as Dan. He was like the loose cannon outside of Luke's Hank. The way that you and Josh developed the character of Dan could have gone either way in this film.
I'll tell you, you're absolutely right, too, first of all. I mean, I was excited every time he had a scene that came up. There's that you always, have actors that you're like, okay, we've got a scene together, with this character. What are we going to do now? And Josh and I talked quite a bit and worked quite a bit together about how sort of far his character could go or should go, and to make him and to keep it believable as well. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of comedy left on the floor with him, because it gets to a certain point where it's like, would he make a joke here?
Yeah, and I have to admit, in the one scene where he's going up the stairs into the, up the stone stairs, into the dark beyond around the corner, and you see a shadow from a flashlight and you hear noises, and I'm thinking, okay, he's trying to scare the hell out of the two girls that are down on the ground. And, that's what I was thinking. That's what I kept thinking, is that he's being a buffoon. And he's really just trying to milk this with the girls around there. But then you turn us in a totally different direction. And I was second guessing myself as to where this character of Dan was going. And I always like surprises like that. Instead of going with the predictable, I like the surprises. And you really deliver quite a few surprises like the character of Dan.
So, good. I'm sure he would be happy to hear that too.
Yeah, I mean, it shows how much thought you put into the making of this film. Now, how excited are you? Film is finally coming out this week.
I couldn't be more excited. I honestly, there's no point in time that we thought that this would get, released in theaters. We would have been perfectly happy with a nice small release, and just for people to see it. So it's definitely, outperforming expectations, and we're all very, very excited.
And the city of Philadelphia didn't give you a big premiere at Holmesburg Prison?
They may have, but and we even thought about it, right? We're like, what would that look like? And I think we all sort of decided it's not a very fun, comfortable place that we'd want to bring people back to.
Well, you could have done it as a block party out on the street,
Yeah,
or in
more appropriate.
Or in the prison yard. So now that you
You
have,
know
that would work, wouldn't it?
that prison yard, just for if people are interested, is active. That yard that we actually filmed in during operating hours when the sun is out. There are prisoners out in that yard during the day.
And just so nobody gets the wrong idea, there are no prisoners in Holmesburg Prison.
Not that I know of.
No, it was shut down in 1995. Well, yeah,
Yep.
that. There could have been some.
The inside. Yeah.
There could have been some left inside there. We never know.
Right. Well, a lot of different stories can be told from in there.
And there are lots of different stories that have been floating around Philadelphia for over a century about that prison. So who knows? But now that you have now ventured into the horror thriller genre and succeeded very well in bringing this to life, what did you learn about yourself in the making of this particular film that you'll now take forward into future projects? And will you go back and maybe revisit Holmesburg or some other prison again?
I had such a good time with this that I think there are a lot of other stories to be told around Holmesburg and sort of around this story even, that I would be more than happy to go back and revisit this. And I think, I learned the most just from the challenges that were presented, and it kind of makes it seem, in a bigger budget film, it seems like those challenges aren't so bad, right? So you're able to approach it and kind of with more confidence. And so that was probably the biggest takeaway.
Mm-hmm. So now what kind of future films might you see coming out of this one?
Well, there is some of the past of Holmesburg I'm very interested in. Mm-hmm. And in terms of how the film ends, I'm very interested to see what might happen afterwards.
Oh, the final shot of the film, and I'm sure, and I'm not going to give it away, but all I can say is it immediately took me to a very famous scene in another film that starred an amazing female action hero.
You're good at the vagueness too. That's pretty good.
I was just like, that was killer for me. That was just. It was like you want to sit there and do a fist pump when you see that scene. And right away, it's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for the sequel. I mean,
wouldn't that be great?
Oh, you have it set perfectly to move into a sequel. And I can't wait for fans to see this film and recognize, that element of this other very famous franchise. Because that's immediately what I thought. But then also you have some other effects in there. I don't think we're giving away anything if we say that, there are old gas masks and things within the prison because of things that used to be done in the prison. But you really got very creative and inventive utilizing them within the construct of the film and within plot points. And there again, you've got visual reference, touchstones to other iconic moments in films. And I really, really appreciated that you put that kind of time and thought into this, which is another thing that takes you away from being just a cheesy horror film. It's all these the details, Brian. You put the details in.
It definitely helps, as you say, having touchstones and things that people can reference so that you don't have to put all the work in. They see an image and they sort of know what it means because it's sort of built into you.
So I've got one more question for you before I let you go. I want to ask you, because the city of Philadelphia is known for its generosity with tax credits. The state of Pennsylvania is good, but Philadelphia is even better with their tax credits. Do those tax credits filter down and work well for a low-budget film like Against the Night?
We were low budget enough that it didn't affect us a great deal, but their policies of how you can shoot a low budget film far exceeds, it far made up for that. They don't push around low budget filmmakers. They want you there. They'll make it work for you. And the film commission there was absolutely fantastic to work with, and made it possible. Really, I mean, you can imagine them or anybody saying, it's probably not a good idea to shoot in this prison, and if you did, it would cost you a lot of money. But they make it work for you. They're very good.
Yeah, Robert Lukadic, when he shot in Philly, he said it was absolutely phenomenal dealing with the film commission in the city of Philadelphia, getting what he wanted, what he needed, and as you said, they want you to see your vision. They want to try and work with you. It's like they're not slapping the handcuffs on you and saying, like back in the Rizzo days of, no, we're just we're gonna slap the handcuffs on you and we're gonna tie you down. So no, you have to conform to what we'll let you do, rather than us working with you so that we can help you make happen what you want to have happen. And every filmmaker I know that has been working with the Film Commission in Philadelphia the past 20 years easily just raves. And it's also for what you're saying. They want you to succeed and make what you want to make. They want to help you bring your vision to life. And there's not too many film commissions that I think do that.
Right, not as well as them, that's for sure.
Brian, thank you so much. When will we have our DVD and Blu-ray out with our movie According to Hank?
January.
So it'll be available.
We'll be able to pre-order for Christmas, that's for sure.
That I was just going to say, a perfect pre-order Christmas gift. Well, Brian, this has been an absolute delight. I am so thrilled. Thank you so much for joining me on Behind the Lens today. And thank
you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I hope you will come back. I would love to have you come back when the DVD Blu-ray comes out. And we can
happy to be back.
Talk about all your extras.
all separate movies there. Let's talk about those.
All right. Well, everybody can see Against the Night. For more information, go to againsttthenight.com.
That's it.
And in theaters, do we know how many cities it's in this Friday?
10 cities.
10 cities. Is Philadelphia one of them?
Of course.
I was going to say. So it's L.A., New York, Philadelphia, and a few other choice ones. Everybody needs to go see Against the Night. It is a perfect film as we head into the fall, where things go bump in the night. Brian Cavallaro, thank you so much.
Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was Brian Cavallaro, writer, director, cinematographer, and producer of Against the Night. Let's see. What do we have time for, Pam? We have time for one more clip. Do we have time for clip number 4? I didn't write down how long these clips are. She has the times. Okay, well, we're going to jump back to My Cousin Rachel and Roger Michelle, and we're going to hear Roger talk about the cinematography. The cinematography of My Cousin Rachel is absolutely stunning. Again, one of my favorite words in filmmaking when we have horror, when we have suspense, is ambiguity. And ambiguity is a very important part in du Maurier's books and in film adaptations, as we see the differences between dark and light in production design, in tone, light and shadow, and color all comes into play. So let's hear what Roger Michelle had to say about cinematography in My Cousin Rachel.
I'm curious about your cinematography, because as you mentioned, within Daphne's books, they're very cinematic in the description. And here we now have what you and Mike have done with the cinematography, concentrating on the framing, the use of light and shadow. You have some beautiful sequences where you make great use of negative space, but then your use of candlelight versus daylight, and then using that light to open up and really tell us a lot about each character. Louise's home, it's very open, big windows, it's bright. Philip's home initially, it's very dark, gray, brown, dirty, dingy. Then we have Rachel come in and things start to freshen up. There is more light, and we actually see more candles come out. The windows open. But that plays so much into the beauty of what the visual appeal is.
That's a very smart question. That's a smart observation. Yeah, you're right. The Kendall's house is straight out of the Enlightenment. It's symmetrical. It's got big walls of light that stream into rooms to illuminate the world and to illuminate argument and to illuminate the new understanding of how the world might work. Whereas Philip's home, to begin with, is almost medieval, certainly Elizabethan. It's very dark, it's dirty, it's cluttered, it's crowded, it's covered in dust. And oddly, as the plot gets darker, his house gets lighter, as you pointed out. She brings a different sensibility to bear, and clears away the kind of Miss Havisham sort of dusty curtains and drapes, tears them down, and in their place there's space and there are less objects and there are light walls, and as you say, there's literally more light, more candles, more lamps, etc., etc.
And I think that all the time we have, Pam. Oh, we can do one more. Oh, well, we're doing well today. Well, then let's go to clip number 5. Such
Mastery in terms of keeping everybody on tenterhooks with this wonderful game of chess that's an emotional game of chess being played. How challenging was the editing process for you to find that balance and to keep, suspicion bouncing from person to person to person?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's something you try and get right in the script, and I got it almost right in the script, but there was another rewrite in the cutting room, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. The final rewrite is always in the cutting room, and I was really helped by the score. The score ended up being a really important tool for me as a director in keeping that story pulsing, if you like. Mm-hmm. Rail Jones. So I lent on Rail quite heavily, more than I would normally do in a film. Mm-hmm. And I understood how in these films about suspicion and these psychological thrillers, I understood how important music is and should be.
Well, I think that Rail's score is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, there's so many undernotes and undercurrents with it, and you use it very judiciously as well.
Yeah, I think there's not too much of it, but it really is telling whenever it arrives.
And there we have it. So we've heard all about Holmesburg Prison and Against the Night. Again, it is in theaters in 10 cities this Friday, September 15th. Written, directed, cinematography by BRIAN CAVALLARO. I can't recommend it highly enough. It is fun. It is entertaining. And yes, there are some terrific jump out of your seats moments. And Filmmakers, I can't encourage you enough to check out the film because of the visual composition and what Brian employs and using that Sony camera for the low light situations. And of course, you got to hear about Roger Michell creating My Cousin Rachel, 2017 version. So next week, Elizabeth Blue is going to be the director of Elizabeth Blue is going to be joining us, along with Dwight Little, to talk about his new film, Last Rampage, which stars Robert Patrick. It is off the charts. Incredible. So until then, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.